Zack's films, they're very ideological, right? There's a lot of focus on philosophy, on mythology, that kind of stuff. He really puts effort into making his film intellectual and that sort of stuff. And when a lot of people look at Man of Steel, all they see is boom, boom, pow, and explosions and shit, and they're like, "Oh, this film's not subtle in any way at all." But you know, they're missing out on a lot of subtleties in this film, I think, and I think it's quite obvious when it's explained as well. So everyone knows the bit where Clark's getting bullied and there's a Plato's Republic book in his hand, right? I mean, you two know that.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not like an accident either. I mean, from one side, it's used to show that, Clark, he's a bit of an intellectual, a person of culture, or whatever, from a young age. But I know that it's also Zack kind of confirming to the audience that Krypton is basically Plato's Republic. So I'll explain it like this. One of the big Greek philosophers, ancient Greek philosophers, Socrates, came out saying that, democracy isn't that good because it, leads to mob rule. The will of the people isn't always a good thing. And he was killed for that. He was killed because he was allegedly corrupting the minds of the youths for, speaking out against democracy. And so, and Plato, another famous Greek philosopher, was a student of Socrates. And so when they killed him, he took some of Socrates' skepticism and added some things to it. And clearly he was really emotional and he took it to heart. And Plato's Republic, what it is it's a totalitarian state where the state is run by these people called philosopher kings, so intellectuals. So it's not the will of the people that should run society. It should be the intellectuals, the people who know better, the philosopher kings. And these philosopher kings who rule society from birth, they assign everyone a role. Like how in Krypton, everyone's born, coming onto the planet, and they're already given a role from childbirth, and they're supposed to dedicate their lives to that. And all this is based on a noble lie. So people are lied to, from the philosopher kings, and it's supposed to be for the greater good, and it's supposed to be a blueprint for communism as well. So this is like communism thousands of years before it was created. And so this totalitarian state, Plato's Republic, that's basically what Krypton is. And it's supposed to also be a symbol of extreme selflessness. So your life is not really yours. Your life is the state. Your life belongs to the planet. It belongs to Krypton, which is, I think Jor-El says something to Clark about, even if he wanted to, he couldn't have come with Clark because he's a product of his planet. Like General Zod, everything he does it for Krypton. He doesn't really do it for himself. That's his whole thing, living for Krypton and trying to bring Krypton back. And that's basically the Plato's Republic and Krypton, connection. It's a society where everyone has a role and it's complete selflessness. And then, in an interview I read, I can't find this interview again. It was when Sucker Punch came out and Zack was being asked about Man of Steel, and he talked about doing a Superman who was kind of raised by uh, objectivist, kind of Ayn Randian American farmers, right? So where you have Krypton that is an exaggeration, a symbol of extreme selflessness. I think I also saw a priest on YouTube talk about this. It's on YouTube as well. He talks about how Earth is more Aristotelian. So Aristotle was a student of Plato, and Aristotle also took Socrates' skepticism of democracy, but instead of opting in for a totalitarian state, he opted for a thing known as a polity, or we know it today as a constitutional republic or a constitutional democracy. So there is democracy, people have the freedom to choose who they want, but there's also a constitution that doesn't allow the will of the people thing to get out of hand. And so the people who raise Clark are supposed to be extreme Aristotelians, which is what Ayn Rand's philosophy is. It's like a really exaggerated, extreme version of Aristotle's philosophy. And Aristotle was a believer in private property and individuality. So you can draw the whole selfish thing there as well. And so you have on one hand Krypton, which is absolute selflessness, and then you have the Kansas farmers who are supposed to be more on the selfish side. And Superman, he's supposed to be in between the two, right? Like a balance between the two. It's no secret that Zack is a big fan of Star Wars and George Lucas, and one of the whole themes in Star Wars is, there's supposed to be a balance between the light and the dark side. And the light side is supposed to be selflessness, right? Too much selflessness is not good, but then the dark side and, selfishness, too much of that isn't good either. And there's a golden mean, and that's where you ought to operate. Because, if he's completely selfish, then it's not really heroic. But if he's completely selfless, he's kind of doomed to misery, in a way. And basically that's it with the philosophy. There's a little bit more on, I think Zack once talks about how he has a Ayn Rand aesthetic, and people use this to kind of twist his words to say that he's an objectivist when he's not, and clearly not. So when he says that he has an Ayn Rand aesthetic, and this is connected to the Fountainhead, by the way. The Fountainhead is about artistic integrity and individualism, but not in politics, in art. And there's this book called the Romantic Manifesto, which is basically like the Fountainhead, but a non-fiction version. It's like a whole theory on what art is, on what good art is supposed to be. And when Zack says that he has a Ayn Rand aesthetic, he is referring to Ayn Rand's art theory, which is in the Romantic Manifesto. The book is basically about how naturalism is not a very good art. So art that's supposed to hold a mirror up to the world, supposed to show what real life is actually like, is not good art. It doesn't provide anything of value. And escapism is also not very good art, because, that doesn't provide anything of value either. It's just providing a bit of an escape, nothing that's going to add value of happiness to your life. And so she said that romanticism is good, and what romanticism is it's about idealism. So it's not escapism, not naturalism. It's about ideals that the audience is supposed to strive towards. And that's basically it with Zack having an Ayn Rand aesthetic. And yeah, that's it.